Welcome, everybody. This is Show and Tell, the fourth in a series. And maybe it'll be on Netflix one day, all 5, 6, 7, or series or what have you. So we've got 4 speakers this evening. And the first is Ken Harstein, and he is going to show us what he's done with his fabulous Donner Pass Railroad in N scale. And guys, I've been there 3 or 4 times, and it is a must see. So if you ever get the chance, and you'll see a little bit of it today, here we go. So Ken, take it away. I just gave you rights, and all you have to do is switch and accept, and we should be able to see your screen. There you go. We got you.
All right, here we go. Start. Yeah, so as obvious, I'm modeling Donner Pass, and it's area deep in my heart. I grew up in the area. I hiked up there, accompanied my father was fishing, and ran off to the tracks to watch trains. I just have a deep love of that. This is a shot of the major scenic portion of it. Hopefully it's not jumping as much for you. But anyway, on to the next slide. All right, well. There we go. Oops, that's 2 slides. So this all started in 2012. I had a little small folded dog bone upstairs. I invited over a number of people. You'll recognize obviously Sudro and Lynn and our friend from Holyoke, Ira Labby, in the picture, and to talk about my room in the basement and the plans as I had done them up to that time. It was great to get additional advice, especially from Sudro. Rerouted things.
No, it won't have I know
okay.
You hear what's going on without being able to hear them.
Is everybody, John, am I okay?
Yeah, we could hear you. There was one person. I'm trying to find people that still are not muted, but just keep going. Right. You're fine. You're fine.
So, as a coincidence, in 2012, the NMRA convention was in Sacramento. Sacramento being the lowest elevation on my railroad. In fact, my storage tracks. It goes from Sacramento up to Roseville, up through the Donner Pass, onto the other side to Truckee and to Sparks. So I'm trying to be very prototypical in my setup. So it was great to be out there and go to all the museums and things. The big railroad museum there is not only spectacular to see, but it has a fabulous amount of stuff on railroading in the area. So I was able to pick up diagrams of track plans, photographs, and a number of other things. And that, in addition to going up to Truckee and visiting the Historical Society and various other museums, I gathered a whole bunch of data as I buckled down into exactly how I was going to model this. So we'll show you the results of some of the modeling, basically. This is, oops, wrong direction. Okay. So we'll do a quick walkthrough of the layout here. Right now you're seeing the upper level with Sparks. Now here's where Sacramento will be on the lower level when we get there. We're about almost 2/3 track laid, but Sacramento, then it proceeds up through Truckee, excuse me, up through Roseville, which will be this area will be the major yard for the railroad as it is on the Southern Pacific. Obviously not as big as Roseville is. It's a huge yard that covers most of the traffic for Northern California now. This is lower levels with fruit packing industries of Loomis and Newcastle. As we come around the bend, we wind up in what's going to represent Auburn, which is the beginning of the mountain railroading and the gold country. There's a must-have of having the city hall in Roseville, and it looked daunting to make it, so I was happy to put it in the backdrop. Then I don't have to model it. So we're coming around from Auburn. Now the tracks begin. we come into Colfax, which is pretty much the lowest level. It generally doesn't snow in Colfax, so it's generally the place where engines are turned around. It's also the beginning of the major grade, so there's generally a helper occupying this area. It's also the last area with fruit packing, big pear industry. They call it mountain pears. So as we leave Colfax, we're passing by an area on the prototype known as Long Ravine. It's a little bit condensed here, but nonetheless, you'll see later what it looks like. And we're heading up through, obviously I didn't model every specific place, but this is, I chose places that I could model and that were interesting to me. So this is Magra, which will be a major passing siding on the way up the hill. It's a 2.6% grade on average going up, which is actually pretty close to the prototype, but it's quite challenging in N scale. It takes a good 3 engines to get a train up here, and ultimately, I'm hoping that I'll be able to have actual working helper service pushing trains over. It remains to be seen, but that's the goal. You gamble. And so we're coming around in what's Gold Run. Mostly just scenic opportunities. Here was a major placer mining area where they used water to hydraulic jets to harvest gold from the hillside and sift it. Now we're coming up through Immigrant Gap, which was another major SP site on the hill. Also a place where snow equipment might be turned around on the prototype. I won't do it on mine. This is a project I recently completed at Cascade Lakes. It's a place that I used to come down and watch trains while my father was fishing up over the hill in Cascade Lakes. You come around to Norden with its famous snow sheds and turntable for turning helper engines. Again, snow sheds on the way into tunnels. Sierras are known for average snowfall in a storm is around 4 feet. Storms have been known to dump 20 feet in a single storm, so they take it very seriously. The early railroad, this entire section was 35 miles were put under sheds because they simply couldn't clear it with conventional equipment back in the 19th century. And this is the other side of Donner Summit with a little bit of Donner Lake where the Donner Party consumed themselves. And then this is Truckee, the final place on the layout with this area on the backside here is going to be a major lumber mill, which has been particularly challenging. So we're going to jump ahead. This is my first challenge in trying to figure out what's going on with this lumber mill. There have been several lumber mills in Truckee over the years. This one was built around 1945 and was completely removed around 1990 and has the least amount of photographs available of anything that's ever happened in Truckee because it was a new thing and nobody took pictures of it. I've got these aerial photos and that's basically it. I have very few side photos of what's going on there. And it's partly why I've been reluctant to move ahead on it. I'm just hoping that more stuff will surface, but eventually I'll have to knuckle down and build it. As an interesting feature here, there's a balloon track in Truckee where switch engines are, where the snow equipment and helpers are turned around. And that's this loop here. And as you see, it actually passes through the inside of the lumber mill. And so that was like, I really need to do that. So you can see the, I hope you can see my cursor. You can see the loop up here and where the lumber mill is going to be. These are some of the buildings in Truckee. At the bottom here are actual prototype buildings, not all in the same era that I'm modeling, but as close as I could come. And I've got more pictures of many of these things, obviously, to model them. So that we've got the Sierra Tavern, the building that has the squeeze in, which is a interesting little restaurant that you really are squeezed in. How they got past their fire code, I have no idea. You can barely walk in and out of that place when it's in operation. And then the Truckee Hotel, which has been there since basically the turn of the century. One of the rare buildings that survived many of the fires in Truckee over the years. These are the industries. This tends to be an operating layout, so I left no stone unturned for industries. We have the Standard Oil plant, and then we have the Associated Oil plant. This picture down here is the only thing I've been able to find of the Associated plant, and it clearly shows that something blew up there. There's scrap metal laying all over the place. And so it's really speculation on what these buildings look like on that side. On the other side was this set of buildings here, which I'm 90% sure was later the Coors distributorship. I have some phone books that filled me in on that. These have all been, this is partly with some Walthers kits. This is entirely 3D modeled and printed by Shapeways. The frame was 3D modeled, and then I put siding on it. And then these two buildings over here are cut styrene. Some of it I actually cut on a silhouette cutter. So I did a 2D CAD file and then sent it over to be cut to try and speed things up. This is moving a little further from Truckee on going west. It's the Donner Pass area. This is known as the Rainbow Bridge. It's on old US Highway 40, now bypassed by Interstate 80, but still there. In doing the research, I found this incident where a bear was discovered hanging on the bridge, and much drama over getting it off, so I had to put the bear on the bridge. And then in the early 80s, I did some bike maps there. You can see this snow shed is basically the model of this one here, also on that area going up to Donner Pass, and you can see my dog at the time. This is going a little further. So this is Summit down here, and fairly reminiscent of what goes on at Summit. I have a lot of scenery work to do on the railroad. And this is Donner. This is Norden. And when I was a kid, there was a lake there called Lake Van Norden. So my father would go out there and attempt to fish, and I would run over to the tracks every 30 minutes to try and catch the trains coming by. This is again Cascade Lakes, which up over here is Cascade Ravine. It's not clear what it's but it's Cascade Lakes up here, and the water flow flows down through this ravine, and I would frequently go out here and watch the trains go by. So it was really a must to capture this little bridge. Further down the line is a famous site called Long Ravine near Colfax, and don't have all the spaces necessary to fully model it, but it gives us a feeling of it. And then we come to Colfax. Now, for the past 6 months, I've had this 3D printer, and I've really been printing everything on the 3D printer. This is the largest project so far. It consists of probably about 12 pieces printed put together, because the printer is relatively small. You can't print everything all at once. But it makes it possible. All these little details and doors and everything would be difficult. I was very fortunate in finding someone who had the plans for the renovation of the existing Truckee station. And so I was able to work directly from those plans. Midway through, I discovered that actually my version is a little bit slower. These are the packing plants in the same city of Colfax. They basically ceased operation in the 50s because of a big pear blight in the area, but since I said I've got an operating railroad there, pear blight didn't happen in my parallel universe. And then there's also a Standard Oil distributor there. This is the only photo I've been able to find of it. It's a little unusual in that it's long and skinny. Most Standard Oil stuff was thicker, but it may be on the site of the original Nevada County narrow gauge transfer station, where they took a standard gauge tank car on the main line and then gravity fed it into the narrow gauge car on the lower end, which in this area the narrow gauge ran parallel to the SP before it turned in heading into Nevada City. So we're up right on schedule. This is my last slide. Thank you.
Ken, thanks. That was amazing. The backdrops kill me. When I first saw that picture of the station, I thought that was a photograph. I mean, yeah, it's a photograph, but of the real station. I had to look twice to see that it was yours. So thank
Yeah,
you
I'm
so
really
much.
happy with that.
Yeah, that came out really well. So guys, let me just grab presentation rights again, so you can see the screen. Let me just change a few things here. So for all of you that are here, of which we have over 40 now, name these 4 layouts that you see at the train show. And the first email I see with those 4 names correct will win the last 3 commemorative cars. So going backwards in time, 2020, 2018, 2017. So if you can grab a shot of this, and this is being recorded, so you'll be able to tell. So Ken, thanks again. That was one, guys. I've seen this layout, and I've got pictures of it with the backdrops, and it makes it look like it goes on forever. So nicely done. So next up is Steve Murphy, and Murph, I'm trying to find you. I guess that's you right there. So with just Steve, you signed in just Steve, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I did.
So I'm making you the presenter right now. So go ahead and accept the presentation, and you've got it.
Okay, let's make sure we can.
And guys, do me a favor. All that rustling you hear in the background, that's people who have not muted their lines. So please mute your line if you don't mind, and it'll make it easier. Yep, we see you, Steve. Looking good.
All right, so you have an unobstructed view of the 545?
We do.
Okay, so I'd like to thank John for giving me an opportunity to share some of my American Flyer collection, and he asked for this specifically, so I figured I'd go back a little ways because some of the stuff is not well known to the general public, and it certainly wasn't well known to myself, although I'm sure any Flyer experts here were well aware of this. But this particular unit is a 1940 vintage American Flyer model 545, and what's special about it is the American representative of a Pennsylvania K5 Pacific, which was supposed to be an upgrade on the famous K4 Pacific, but it never really proved itself. But American Flyer made 1 million of them over the years. And they had one, they had the Pacific, and then what they did is they took the shell from the Pacific and they made it into a 442, so a lower priced offering. And if you'll notice the tender looks rather out of place with this particular unit, and that's because it's actually a Chicago Flyer tin plate tender that Gilbert got the rights to when they bought American Flyer sometime in the mid to late 30s. And they kept making these things. And the important thing, or one of the important things about this, is that it is O gauge. I mean, it's S scale, or it's the proper scale for S, but it's designed to ride on 3-rail O gauge track. So it's an interesting piece, and some things to know about it. Headlight, yes. Smoke, no. And what Flyer files will call choo-choo. No choo-choo in this, although choo-choo was available in this period in a tender as an extra cost item. Now, I'm going to see if I can advance this. There we go. All right, it's moving right along. This next item is it's really not that common.
Steve, it hasn't moved.
It hasn't advanced because mine advanced.
Oh, really?
Yes, my screen advanced.
Okay, try it again.
Yeah,
There you go.
No, it did advance. You just can't. I mean,
it's a similar positioning.
Similar looking thing, similar position, but it has definitely advanced.
My bad.
Yes, it advanced. So this is an American Flyer pre-war model of a J1 Hudson, The particular number on this one is a 570. This was also O gauge. And one of the interesting things you notice about the tender, the 12-wheel tender on this, is that it doesn't say American Flyer anywhere on it. It just says New York Central. And this is something they remedied shortly after production resumed after the war with S gauge. But this is also an O gauge unit. Headlight, no smoke, no choo-choo. And again, choo-choo was available in that tender as an extra cost item. But this one took me quite a while to latch onto. It was not easy to find. And here's a bottom view of the same unit, and you can see the pickups, spring-loaded metal slides, not unlike our friends at Mark's, or even lower-priced Lionel also had slides rather than rollers for pickups. And one of the reasons why these things don't turn up that much is that the zinc formulation that they used before the war was really bad, and it tended to deteriorate. And you'll find these things broken in half, falling apart. And I'm not sure who's moving boxes around, but it'd be really great if you did yourself. So yeah, I'm on Zoom meetings all the time, and I don't. You always get the one. But so anyway, yeah, that's the bottom view of a Flyer 3/16 O gauge Hudson. All right, so this particular unit, number 322, this one's a 1948 vintage J1 Hudson. It uses the same casting as that 570 that we just looked at. But this one is an S gauge unit, and it has choo-choo and smoke and a headlight. And what's particularly interesting about this one is that, I think I can zoom in on this. Can we zoom in? Am I zoomed?
Yeah, it's working.
All right. So this little thing, this little cap right here on top of the tender, that is where you put the smoke fluid, because this is what they call smoke in tender. So you didn't put it in the stack like you did with later units. You put it in the tender. And you can see there's a rather thick piece connecting the two. That's the hose that the smoke traveled in to get to the smokestack in this particular unit. Some interesting things about the S gauge that you may not know from a technical standpoint. They always have white tires. You'll notice the S gauge always had white tires or sidewalls on the drivers. And those are plastic insulators so that the locomotive doesn't short out. That's what drove that. So let's see if I can, I'm doing all kinds of crazy stuff now. All right, so on the bottom one here, you can see the tender, you can see the brass wheels on the tender on both sides of the track. Those are the actual pickups for the power. So that's how Flyer steam locomotives receive their power for the track through umbilicals, basically, from the tender, but the actual power went through the track into the tender and then to the locomotive. All right, so this is one of the pride of my fleet, John. You love this. This is a 1952 K335 Union Pacific. It's a fairly decent representation of FEF 3484, which is a rather famous locomotive these days. It's part of UP Steam program, one of those, or the 844 specifically. This is a pretty nice representation of it. And the interesting thing about the K is that K stood for knuckle. Now, if we go back in some of you can look at the couplers on the back of the tender. You can, but in this was their first attempt to go to knuckle couplers. In '52, there was 2 sets that had knuckle couplers, and this was the lead unit of one of them. And this one also has, so this has smoke, it has headlight, it has choo-choo, and it has Nathan air chime, which really is just a buzz, but it does make noise. And That was all due to issues with Lionel suing them over putting whistles in tenders. All right, this unit right here is 1957, 2000 or 21,004. It's a plastic representation of a Pennsylvania B6 SB switcher, 1 year only. Kind of hard to find. They run really nice, and it has lights on both ends in the tender and the boiler front, and I believe it smokes. And I'm not sure about choo-choo, but I haven't run it in a while. But I'm going to guess it's choo-choo as well. All right, these two beauties, 490 and 492, came from the Bill Townsend collection, and they run. It's a dual motor PA, Alco PA, but they're dual motors, and they run kind of rough. This one runs rough. They had a tendency to wear funny if they weren't lubricated properly, and God knows children weren't really good at lubricating things. They were really good at running them. So it wobble. It has the famous American Flyer PA wobble as it goes down the track, and it needs to have the bushings replaced on the truck frames. But it's a rather rare set. 1957 only, and it led both a very desirable passenger set and a freight set. Okay, moving along. All right, this is something that I've come to really enjoy. All right, so Hobby Surplus, better known to many of you as Amato toy store in New Britain, they bought out all the old stock of American Flyer when American Flyer went out of business. They bought all the shells, anything left over, parts they bought. And sometime in the early 70s, they sent out a large amount of shells to Chris Model Trains, which was a manufacturer of O-gauge boxcars based on an old AMT tooling for O-gauge boxcar. But what he did, so this is Steve Amato's father that did this, is my understanding. He sent these shells out to them. They sent reefers like the one you see in front of you, boxcars, and also hoppers. And there's a 3-bay hopper, if you will, that was used. And I don't have any pictures of any of those, but I do own some of those. So I've been collecting these things because they're rare. They're more modern. I mean, I'm old enough to remember seeing Great Northern, heralds like this on freight cars. So this one happens to be a reefer. They usually come on what they call Pikesville trucks, which were the cheap trucks they use at the end of production. They really cheapened up the trains a lot, so they don't work as well as the earlier knuckles, and they're plastic and they tend to break. But this doesn't get operated anymore. This is more of a collector item than anything. So the next one is a Penn Central boxcar, and you'll notice everything is in black, and you'll notice the road number is 374003. This one also rides on the Pike Master trucks. So here's the next one, same road number. I don't know how I'm going to ever, put cards together for this thing to get somebody to figure out which car is what. I'll have to put, 003 black and 003 white for it ever to have an op session. But this is the white Herald version of the same car. This next one, this reefer, Canadian National, they made an O-gauge version of this as well. And these things, I mean, they bring a lot of money still to this day. I mean, I'm chasing them on eBay and I'm not winning them. And I've paid a pretty penny for the ones that I do have. All right, the last item I have here is a American Flyer 24422, which is a really common item, except that the really common item is usually a reefer. But this one happens to be built on a boxcar mold rather than a reefer mold. And you'll notice that it's almost the exact same color as the Penn Central. I think these were some of the blanks that ended up going to Chris Model Trains to get redecorated. And they did do a Burlington Northern that's in the same color. So, I think they just had to spray the logos on. But this is one of the most valuable versions of the 24422. And so I thought I'd show that. And that's some of the high points of my my flyer collection. And I guess I'm going to wrap it up and thank you all for listening. Thank John for giving me the opportunity.
All right. Thanks, Steve. I enjoyed it. I not to get overly personal, but that's how I got my start. American Flyer, 1957, G. Fox and Company's train layout. It was very cool at the time. So, guys, you should be looking at my screen right now. Those are the 4 layouts that are at the train show. Name them. The first one who gets it right sends me an email, gets a 3 commemorative cars. So this is like the shopping network, as I mentioned last time. Announcements. This Saturday, July 25th, from 9 until noon. Bring your own water, bring your own food, because we're not allowed. But we have an outdoor work session, and it's partly grounds upkeep. We're going to be doing some weeding and just some landscaping, and 7 1/4 session. Where we are, what's next. We probably have to buy some more stone for ballast, et cetera, all that kind of stuff. Masks will be required, guys. Please bring a mask. We're going to take your temperature at check-in. So we have one of those things you hold up to your forehead, gives you your instant read on your temperature. So that's what's happening this Saturday, 9 a.m. And by the time noon comes along, it'll be hot. So we'll probably break it up right then. So guys, next up is Bob Paquette, and you've seen his work. He's been around for a while, and he's going to talk to us about the construction of the layout that was at Pioneer Valley for a very long time. So Bob, I'm looking for your name in the list, in the alphabetical list. So hang in there, I'll find it. And we're going to give you rights right now. So we're making you the presenter. So go ahead and accept presentation rights, Bob, and have at it. So guys, Bob has about 100 plus slides out of the 1,000 that he is taken on his construction from, as he will tell you, a pile of wood to the final construction, which is a beautiful HO scale layout. So you're all set, Bob.
We'll try. Okay, what am I hitting wrong here?
Just minimize that. So go up and hit that little minus in the upper right-hand corner, right? One more over. Yeah. Minimize one more. Yeah, right there. Minimize that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you should have access to your desktop. So wherever you put your slideshow.
Oops.
It's probably somewhere in the tray.
All righty. I was looking to see the whole screen, right?
We could see your screen, so you're good.
Can you see the whole screen?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. I'm bringing up now.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, all righty, very good. Okay, great. I'll have to move this over to the other side to get all the way so that I can see this. All right. I've been working on this layout over at the Pioneer Valley Hobby for about 8 years. And I started over on Myron Street some time ago. And this is what happened.
Bob, hey, Bob, click on
Yep.
that. Click on that first picture. You're going to just show them in a folder. So just click on those. Click on it. Double click on that, and then we'll see the big version of it.
Okay, very good.
And then to get to the next slide, there you go.
Okay.
Yeah, then you'll just hit, there's that arrow to get to the next slide.
All righty.
There you go.
Okay. So when I got to, Dennis asked me if I would build the layout for him. And I said, sure, but I'm going to need some space. So I had to chop this section of his G scale. We had to dismantle of this. And so that gave us, once it was gone, I had this space here and I started building. And I had to come up with a plan. And from there, I had to make a template to determine what the layout is going to look like. It was 10.5 by 5 front. And I needed to put it on cabinets, so then put casters underneath so I could move it around, make it portable. And there was the lumber, so I purchased the lumber, and here we go. I started building the cabinets in the hobby shop. And once they were built, I put casters underneath, and I had made drawings on all the sub assemblies to put this whole thing together. So I cut all the pieces based on the drawings, and I started assembling it on top of the cabinets. And I put some of the assemblies on tables and built them there. And then after, they were attached to the layout and bolted and glued. And then I put the template back on to make sure everything fit. I took it off the cabinet, stood it upright, and I started wiring it. And I drilled through a lot of pass-throughs so I could get the wiring. The layout was, the bench work was put back on the top of the cabinets, and it was hinged on the back. And the reason being is that this was going to be a tilt top. Once the plywood was applied to the bench work, I took these pistons from my old, the hatch on my old minivan, and I installed them on the underside of the layout here. And that way I could tilt the layout up so I could work on the underside if I had to for putting the switches or any more wiring. And then when I put the template back on, I drew red lines where the changes in elevations were going to be. So that's where I would cut the foam. Once the pieces of foam were cut, the template was applied to the next level up, and then it was cut again at the next elevation. And then the template was applied to that, and it continues doing that like this, and the intricacy, and it just kept going up like that. As you can see, the change in elevations going up. And then I started at that point, I says, I'm going to start at this end, the far left, and I'm going to start doing some mock-ups to see where the buildings are going to fit. Once some of the buildings were started, they replaced the mock-ups. And then I applied a backdrop on the plywood that would go on the back of the layout. Once the plywood was put in place, it was behind the buildings, and it gave me that kind of a scenery. Now I didn't have to use the templates anymore, and I removed the templates and I started marking where the track, where the cork roadbed was going to be applied. And you can see this is where all the tunnels all converge. The lower one, the center, now this and this are one layout, I mean one track, and the one on the top was a separate one and not connected to the lower two. Now in the inside the mountain, I put a piece in here with all of the angles coming off of each one of the tunnel openings. And then I built this component which had all of the angles so that when this was applied in here, it was connected to the tunnels from the inside of the mountain. And then steel channels were laid right in and connected to them. And they didn't have to be supported because the steel channels were rigid enough. They required no support at all. And that was about 6 feet long. And then I put foam roadbed on the inside of the mountain, and I glued it, double stick tape on the inside of the steel channels and on the curves going in. There's the track going into each one of the tunnels from the inside of the mountain. And then I tested the track to make sure all the track was running smooth. There it is on the inside of the mountain, and these 2x4s are now going to hold up the top of the inside of the mountain compartment. Now the plywood is applied here over the top of the track, and that enclosed this, and I put it in at an angle so that I could stand up behind the layout and look down, and instead of having a flat top where I'd have to not be able to see inside these channels, by having this angle, I could stand up here and look inside all the channels and make sure nothing had dropped off onto the track, or make sure there's no loose parts. Now, as you can see, with the pistons working just fine, I was able to tilt up the layout, and the inside of the mountain is enclosed now with plywood, and I would continue with foam building up the face of that. You'll see that while I was working with the 45-degree angle, all I had to do was stand in the back and just glue the foam in place right to the plywood. And it was going up like that at an angle. They're glued here and on the face of the lower pieces. And as it's going up, I cut the contours with a hacksaw blade without the handle, just the blade. And it was very flexible, and I use a cheap blade because the ones in China aren't very well tempered, so I can bend them and flex them and twist them to cut these things, and they don't break. Now the top was done, and I was in the front, and I had to start cutting out the quarry. And I make plaster of Paris slabs. I used a wooden form that I made, and I clamped it together, and I put the plaster of Paris in here, and I also made stone wall panels, and they were in latex molds. And here's one of the slabs coming out after I moved the wood away from the form. I used those slabs later, and I'll show you. Now the quarry is cut out of the foam, and the plaster cloth was applied all the way around, and I made the road going up at an angle all the way up to the upper level in the quarry. Now those slabs that you saw before are cut and fitted in here and applied with Sculptamold, using it as mortar. And then the plaster cloth continued over here, went around to the right end of the layout. And those are the tunnel openings you saw from the other side where the track and the component fit. And the track is now going in here. This is a vehicle tunnel here. Now, these are sandbags, and I put a latex mold, a large latex mold of rocks, rock formation, and I filled up the plaster of Paris into the mold, and then I applied it while it was still wet, and I put the sandbags up against it to make sure there's no air pockets between the plaster and the styrofoam. When it was dry, I peeled the latex mold off, and the rock formation is there. You can see it's all here. And then it was time to do a template for the trestle that goes from the upper track here. That would be the one that's an independent, separate piece of track. It's not connected to the lower two. And with that template, I started building the trestle, and this is all plastruct, and it's bonded together with bondine. I don't use glue. The pieces fit together like this. They're all cut and cut at an angle. And then it was the white pieces are evergreen, and they were also connected with, applied with Bondene. I checked the curve on that with the template, and then it was time to install it. I set it in place and I checked the level on it, which the bubble you can see is perfect. Then I started finishing the details with those stone panels that I made in the latex mold. Here's some here, there, and you'll see more around there. Then now I started doing the finish work here, the paint on them. And now I was with the support on the trestle, it was going to have to rest right here on the stone. So I cut into the side of the stone and I applied a support right here, a footing. There's more panels of those stone panels that I made with the latex mold. There's some here, there's some here, and those slabs were cut into pieces, and I used the slabs to fit between here so I could make this curve with straight panels. Now I've got the supports. These supports are made with Plastruct and applied, and now you can see the trestle resting on that footing. And this is then above, this is an upper view looking down at these supports, and it straddles the roadway, the track, and down here. Now it was time to build a lighthouse. I designed my own because I didn't like any of the ones that I saw, so I designed my own. This is a plastic form. This is all evergreen that I cut. And then this is going to be the attached building. Now it's put together according to the drawing. This is a pencil drawing, by the way. And then I wanted to make it stone. So I marked each level, and every one of these stones is a piece of flat plastic strip, and they're applied one by one all the way around so that it was finished. It looked like that. And then the lighthouse goes up on the hill facing the sea. And now I made a template in the center of the layout. This is where all of the river will flow down and flow into the ocean here. So I wanted to put a piece of masonite right there. So I cut a paper template. I used the template to make a masonite piece, and the masonite fit into there. And then once it was in place and it was glued down, I put all of the plaster around here, the rock formations, the spillway. And then there was going to be a bridge, so the bridge goes over the spillway. And then it was time at the other end, the left end of the layout, I needed to make another template because there was another very sharp curve, which I'll point later. And that's going to be a template, a trestle that's built like this. You can see now it's beginning to fit in there. I've also checked for level on that. And then I painted it and I installed it. And then it was time to paint the quarry and put the little detailing on the rocks. The quarry was going to need 2 derricks, and so I scratch built them. I found some photographs from old quarries from the 40s and 50s, and I scratch built this out of styrene. And these are all basswood with plastic joiners here. And then I cut the pieces right here. These are slabs that are going to become a retaining wall. I put the retaining wall I drew it on the table here, and then I put the pieces all together and then reapplied it onto the layout, and then it was attached to the foam. Now there's the lighthouse in place. I put 2 more bridges across here. You can see the derricks over here in the quarry. And I started doing some ground foam. Some track is already through here. I've got some rock formations already in there. And this is my technique that I use. It's a plastic foam that people use for your gutters to keep the leaves from collecting in your gutters. Well, they sell it at Home Depot, and I bought a strip of that, and I started tearing it apart. And then I put those little pieces in a container and covered it. I squirted Elmer's glue all over it and squeezed it all to make them all saturated with glue. And then I put it in a coffee container filled with it's Woodland Scenics fine ground foam. You can use whatever shade of green you like. And after I shake it, and then I take them out, they look like this. And when they're applied, they end up looking like this. And I don't like the old cotton balls rolled in wood, the ground foam. They always look like fuzzy ping pong balls. Now this is some track here, and coming around this side, I'm going to get this out of the way here. Okay, that's the track. It's coming around to this side. You can see that that trestle is now in place, goes in the tunnel there. And now I started working on the yard at the far left end of the layout. Over here, you can probably see there's a tenement. There's another shot of that later. And here's the wharf, and there's the buildings that I'm going to install. Those were all scratch built. There's the tenement. That's Tenement Row by Earl Smallshaw. And these are all wooden structures. There's no plastic anywhere in there. And the only thing other than the wood on those are these chimneys, which are white metal. And then I've finished the stonework here. I finished the stonework in here, and I'm doing the waterfront here. And now this is what it looks like once the the quarry has all the scenery all the way around, and I've got scenery on the track. And I started working on the cannery down on the right corner. Once it's finished, it looked like this. It's right down below the trestle here. And this is the far right side of the layout that goes into the tunnel. This is the cannery, and that's this end, and that's pretty much that's it.
That looks like it. Well, Bob, that
That
was
is
unbelievable. Fantastic. I will give you a great compliment and tell you you are a Sudro Brown, Tom Lowry level planner. And that says something, because those guys plan.
oh,
And I love that portion of it. So thank you so much. I am going to take back and share the screen.
okay.
Guys, one more. Bob, thank you so much.
I hope I didn't take too much time.
Don't worry. It was fine. So, guys, don't forget this Saturday, the 25th of July, 9 to noon, outdoor work session. Bring a mask. We're going to take your temperature, and we'll have some fun out there. Bring some water. Bring your own food, because we can't provide it until we get to the next level of whatever they're doing. So, also check out these 4 pictures. Tell me what layouts they are. They're all at the train show. And if you get all 4, send me an email. The first one I see with the right answers, get 3 commemorative cars. So cool. So now our final speaker, guys, you all know him really well. He's spoken many times before. He's got great photographs. and I just need to find them. And where the
I'm
hell?
out to lunch.
How did you sign on, Doug? I can't find your name.
It should be RDS.
Ah, okay. Yes, I see. It's under the R's. You try to fake me out. All right. So here we go. We're making you the presenter right now. So take it away.
All right. Let's see if this works.
One can only hope. There you go. We got you.
All right. Can you all see that?
Yeah.
Is it full enough screen?
Yes, it is full.
Okay. Well, this is my show and tell. I'm not a modeler so much like everybody else that's presented, although I do have a layout and I hack at it. But I enjoy my photography more than the modeling, actually. So when John wanted show and tell during our quarantine, I figured I had one or two pictures, though I haven't been out as much as I had hoped, obviously, to be. So we'll get right into it. Okay, here we go. From January to the end of February, I was good to go, and we did stuff. Then all of a sudden we came to a halt. And then by the middle of April and end of March, middle of April, we started eking out a little bit, but I didn't actually cross the canal once this all started. Just went across once, middle of March, and then again last Saturday night was the next time I went across the canal. Started out with a bang up in North Conway, New Hampshire, with the return of the 7470 and the Mass Bay Railroad Enthusiast Charter of Steam in the Snow. And it was a cold, drizzly, overcast day. It snowed a little bit, but sun did not come out. Then following that Saturday, I was out in Palmer to do a presentation. So getting there in daylight, was able to get a few pieces of equipment moving around. If you notice, I believe that's water bottles out cooling off on top of the 6205. And then the following week down, Mass Coastal has leased a locomotive for their off-Cape work, but it came to the Cape running the trash train for a week or so in January. So where I had never seen it, I got a chance to photograph it since it was on the Cape. Then moved from there a few days later down to Dartmouth. Between Dartmouth and New Bedford, the Bay Colony still runs 6 miles of track that they own. Plus, they sublease from Mass Coastal, which leases from the state, a section of the New Bedford to the old Watapa track that went over to Fall River. Not all of it is in service, but there is some to Westport that goes to Scrap Dealer. Then at the end of February, Ellen took a glass class down in Fort Myers, Florida. She actually invited me to go along with her, but I didn't do the glass class. I went out and played instead. So where I am part of the Railroad Station Historical Society group as well, I went and searched out a couple of stations. This one still has active track, which is the Seminole Gulf Railroad runs by it. It's a nice a little museum here, plus an antique junk curiosity shop in the freight room. And then, of course, the Seminole Gulf. Seminole Gulf and Bay Colony, if you see the little seagull there. Seminole Gulf and Bay Colony are sister railroads. And of course, Bay Colony used to run on the Cape before they lost their contract. And then in March, Keolis sent down a geometry train to check out the track. The first one only went as far as Buzzards Bay. Top picture there is the little trestle in Wareham Center. The other one is the newly built Cohasset Narrows Bridge in Buzzards Bay itself. That shot's taken from the marina looking across the water.
What?
Just west of downtown Buzzards Bay, or Railroad North. You can see the Amtrak car in there. That's the actual geometry car. They came back the end of April to do the rest of the track from Buzzards Bay down to Hyannis. This is in a rainstorm passing the West Barnstable station. And this is at the Yarmouth Y. For those of you who are not that familiar with this area, the locomotive is headed to Hyannis, but the other track in the foreground at the Y here in Yarmouth goes to the trash transfer station, which is in Yarmouth. And that would have been the track that would have gone down to Provincetown, and then a branch off in Harwich would have gone to Chatham back in the 30s. And then, of course, trash. That's the biggest commodity they haul other than passengers. Trash is a year-round commodity on the Cape. And we did get some sun, finally. This is at West Barnstable. If you've not been down to photograph West Barnstable is a good place to photograph. A lot of different angles. We've got the station and the siding, and once in a while they put stuff there. But this year, not only did they run trash, but they brought a real freight car down with a generator on it and some MassDOT ballast cars. So they spread ballast and brought the generator down at the same time. Here again at West Barnstable. And then ballast. They've been doing a lot of track work all the way up and down the line. And right now they're rebuilding the Falmouth line that goes into Otis Air Base, which was the Otis transfer station. It's no longer taking trash, but they do take construction and demolition materials out. Then for the last X number of years, the Cape Flyer has been running, but prior to start of operations for the Cape Flyer, they have to requalify the crew or qualify new crew. So they'll run a train down midday from Middleborough and the Middleborough layover yard, one that's not actually in service except for rush hour. So they'll bring a train down with the crew, and this happens to be at Sagamore Bridge in the background, Cape Cod Canal, and where the fence is on the left used to be the site. Well, it is the site of the old Sagamore station. And this is a close-up of that train. This is at West Barnstable. Cape Cod chapter of the National Railway Historical Society runs the West Barnstable station. We were doing some work there, so I grabbed the baggage cart and put it out trackside in order to somewhat hide the high-level platform. I kind of like this picture. Then our pride and joy right now, the two FL9s that were bought by a private party and leased to Cape Cod Central for their passenger trains. They came to the operation in November 2018, but 2019 was the first full year of use. They run one on each end of the train rather than back to back like this. We'd love to see it like this, but for operational purposes, it's easier for them to not have to do runarounds and just have an engine on each end. So I spent a good bit of time last summer photographing the FL9s everywhere I could on the Cape. This was back in May. They put them back to back in the yard for a few days just to move them around. So I was able to get permission to go down into the yard, as long as I didn't cross the tracks, and photograph them like this up close and personal. And they look good like this. I would like to see them run once or twice like this on a sunny day. It would be nice. And then they were able to run the same day that the Cape Flyer started. Well, actually, the Cape Flyer started on June 26th, but in May they did a test run down to the canal and back. And then when they were headed, they had an excursion that they ran out of Buzzards Bay. And then moving late in the afternoon, moving the passenger equipment back to Hyannis, they had to clear the main in order for the trash train to go north, taking the stuff up from the Yarmouth transfer to the CMAS waste to energy power plant. It's a furnace that burns the trash and creates electricity. That's, as I said, the trash is the main commodity on the Cape for the Mass Coastal. And then beginning of July, they started running dinner trains again. This is dinner on the first dinner train of the year, July 2nd. Upper left rather, is Cummaquid Golf Course right outside of Hyannis. Bottom is passing by the Bourne Bridge, which they go underneath, and just prior to heading out onto the Buzzards Bay Railroad Bridge. Then that same evening, a little later on, the first Cape Flyer of the year came down. This is stopped at the Bourne station, which was brand new last year. They did that to alleviate trying to cross the Bourne Bridge to get to the Buzzards Bay station for traffic. People get off here now and they don't have to cross the bridges and deal with Friday night and Sunday night and Saturday and Sunday traffic. On 4th of July weekend, the Cape Flyer came down on their Saturday, Sunday schedule, which is down in the morning and back at night. They also had a passenger run out of Buzzards Bay that same day. So early in the morning, the Cape Flyer came down, and this is at Sagamore Siding. They had to pass the passenger train on the way to deadheading down to Buzzards Bay. So this is another gloomy day. But then the night before, this was the passenger train, or the dinner train rather, passing through Aptuxet, which really isn't Aptuxet. It's block limit Aptuxet, but Aptuxet is actually, the true Aptuxet is actually closer to the canal, to the lift bridge. Bourne Bridge is the right-hand structure overhead. And that's it for me for tonight.
Excellent, Doug, as always. Great photos. I especially love that close-up when it was the AA setup. It was, you're right, that's a gorgeous set of engines. Thank you so much. Let me grab screen back, guys. So last shot, guys, at this. These 4 layouts are at the train show. Name them and you win if you're the first one. So 4 layouts. Check it out. And also, don't forget, this Saturday on the 25th from 9 a.m., while it's still cool, we hope, until noon, an outdoor work session, grounds upkeep. We're going to actually do some weeding and some raking and such. 5 1/4 session will also be going on. Building will be open for lavatories only. Masks will be required. Please bring one. Temps will be taken at check-in. And guys, the next show and tell, if you want to be a presenter, let me know. Show director at amherstrail.org. We're always looking for great presentations. You saw some great ones this evening. So I thank all of those folks. And we'll talk to you soon, and we'll get emails out to you when the next one will be. So